I stared at the email for a full minute, reading it over and over to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. But there it was, plain as day. Team for Johnson and Mercer pitch meeting. David, Marcus, Andrew, and Bethany. My name, Charlotte Hayes, was nowhere to be found. This couldn't be right. I had spent 3 weeks developing the core concept for this presentation. The innovative marketing approach that would potentially land our agency the biggest client of the year was my idea, meticulously researched and refined night after night. I had even missed my best friend's birthday dinner to perfect the slides. I took a deep breath and marched down the hallway to Richard's office. As creative director, he had final say on team assignments, and I needed answers. His door was open, and he was leaning back in his chair, phone pressed to his ear, that trademark confident smile on his face. When he noticed me, he held up one finger in the universal signal for just a minute. I waited, arms crossed, as he wrapped up his call with plenty of laughter and promises to catch up over drinks soon. "Charlotte, what can I do for you?" he said, setting his phone down. "I just saw the email about the Johnson and Mercer pitch team," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm not on it." Richard's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Right. Look, we needed to keep the team tight for this one. David's leading, and he wanted to bring in Marcus for the digital components. But the entire concept is mine," I said. "I've been working on this for weeks. You and David both praised the approach last Friday. And it's excellent work," Richard said, nodding. "Which is why we're using it. But the client specifically requested a smaller team, and David felt confident with the group he selected. The unspoken truth hung in the air between us. David had taken my concept and assembled his usual team, all members of his weekly golf foursome, plus Bethany, his protege who'd been with the company for all of 8 months. "So my work is being presented, but I'm not allowed to be there?" I clarified. Richard shrugged, already reaching for his ringing phone. "You'll get credit in the deck, of course. And there will be other opportunities, Charlotte. This isn't personal. It's just business. Just business." The same phrase he'd used when I was passed over for the senior creative strategist position 6 months ago, despite having outperformed everyone in my department for 2 years straight. I walked back to my desk, mind racing. 7 years in this industry had taught me one thing. In advertising, ideas were currency. And mine had just been taken without proper compensation. My computer pinged with a message from Zoe, our account manager, and one of my closest allies at Walker & Reed Advertising. "Just heard. That's completely messed up. Coffee?" 10 minutes later, we were at the cafe across the street. Zoe listened as I vented my frustration, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "This isn't the first time," she pointed out. "Remember the Altitude Sports campaign? They used your tagline but had Jeffrey present it. And the CloudNet rebrand," I added. "My color scheme and positioning statement, but somehow I wasn't senior enough to be in the room." Zoe stirred her latte thoughtfully. "What are you going to do?" I stared out the window at the Walker & Reed building, its sleek glass exterior gleaming in the spring sunshine. 7 years of dedication, countless late nights and weekends sacrificed. Always the reliable workhorse, never the recognized thoroughbred. "I don't know," I admitted. "File it away as another disappointment, I guess. Or," Zoe said, leaning forward, "you could take your idea and pitch it yourself." I laughed, but Zoe didn't join in. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. Johnson and Mercer hasn't signed with anyone yet. Your concept is brilliant, Charlotte, and you know it better than anyone else." The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. That would be career suicide at Walker & Reed. "Maybe," Zoe conceded. "But if they're never going to give you the recognition you deserve anyway, what are you really risking?" Back at my desk, I couldn't focus. Zoe's suggestion kept replaying in my mind. It was outrageous, possibly unethical, and increasingly appealing. I pulled up the Johnson and Mercer brief. They were looking for a fresh approach to revitalize their brand, something that would speak to a younger demographic without alienating their established customer base. My strategy leveraged user-generated content in an innovative way that would create authentic connections while maintaining the company's reputation for reliability. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Need the final version of your J&M slides by EOD. Making some tweaks to the presentation flow. Tweaks. Right. More likely, repositioning my work to seem like it had been a group effort all along. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the business card I'd been holding onto for months. Melissa Turner, the former head of our digital department, had left 6 months ago to start her own boutique agency. She'd told me to call if I ever wanted a change. Walker and Reed doesn't deserve you, she'd said. They'll never see past their boys' club. I tapped her card against my desk, weighing my options. Then I picked up my phone and dialed. Melissa, it's Charlotte Hayes. I think I might have an opportunity for both of us. You want to what? Melissa's voice came through my phone speaker, equal parts shocked and intrigued. I glanced around the park where I'd decided to take this call, well away from corporate ears. I want to pitch my concept to Johnson & Mercer independently, through your agency. The same concept Walker and Reed is pitching next week? Yes, I admitted. It's my work, Melissa. My research, my strategy, my execution plan. They're presenting it without me, and it's not the first time. There was a pause. You know how risky this is, right? Not just professionally, but legally. Your employment contract. I've reviewed it, I cut in. Ideas developed for specific clients belong to the agency, yes, but my contract states that conceptual approaches and methodologies remain intellectual contributions that can't be exclusively claimed. In truth, I'd spent hours the previous night combing through my employment agreement, looking for loopholes. The wording was frustratingly vague, but I'd found just enough ambiguity to give me confidence. Plus, I continued, I'm not taking any proprietary materials, no slides, no documents, no client-specific data, just my approach, which I can articulate and develop differently. Melissa sighed. You've thought this through. I have, I confirmed. And I'm ready to leave Walker and Reed regardless. This is just determining whether I go out with a bang or a whimper. All right, she said finally. Come by the office tomorrow. If we're doing this, we need to move fast. The pitch is when? Next Thursday. Then we need to get in front of them by Tuesday at the latest. The next day was Saturday, but Melissa's office was buzzing with energy. Turner Creative might be small, but it had quickly developed a reputation for innovative work. I recognized several former colleagues who had made the jump from larger agencies. Melissa introduced me to her team. Alex, her creative partner, Natalie, their account director, and Jordan, a digital strategist whose work I'd admired from afar. Charlotte has a unique opportunity, Melissa explained, deliberately vague. A major potential client with a tight timeline. Everything we discuss stays in this room. I laid out my concept for Johnson & Mercer, the customer-centric approach that leveraged real stories through a digital platform I called Heritage Forward. The idea balanced the company's 75-year legacy with contemporary relevance, creating a bridge between generations of customers. This is solid, Alex said, examining the rough mock-ups I'd sketched. Really solid, but we need to differentiate it from whatever Walker and Reed will present. That's the challenge, I admitted. The core concept needs to remain intact. It's what makes the strategy effective. But we can evolve the execution. For hours, we brainstormed, refined, and expanded. The energy was unlike anything I'd experienced at Walker and Reed, where ideas were often met with skepticism or immediately filtered through the lens of what Richard will approve. By evening, we had transformed my original concept into something more robust, with added dimensions for social impact and community engagement that I'd wanted to include, but had been told were unnecessary complications by David. Now for the hard part, Melissa said as we wrapped up. Getting in the room with Johnson & Mercer. Natalie, who had been quietly taking notes, looked up. I might have a way in. Their CMO, Diana Pierce, was my client at my previous agency. We had a good relationship. Would she take a meeting on short notice? I asked. For the right pitch, yes. She's always been open to fresh perspectives. But she's also very loyal. If she's already committed to hearing Walker and Reed, the pitch isn't until Thursday, I reminded her. That means they haven't made any decisions yet. I'll reach out first thing Monday, Natalie promised. Sunday was a blur of preparation. I worked from home, refining the presentation while trying not to think about the potential fallout. If Walker and Reed discovered what I was doing, I'd be fired immediately. If Johnson and Mercer mentioned our meeting to them, my reputation in the industry could be damaged. But then I remembered all the times I'd watched from the sidelines as others presented my work. The congratulatory emails that circulated after successful pitches, where my name appeared as an afterthought, if at all. The promotions that went to less qualified colleagues who happened to play golf or drink bourbon with the right people. Monday morning, my phone rang at 9:15. It was Natalie. "Diana can see us tomorrow at 10 a.m., she said without preamble. "Small group, just you, me, and Melissa." She was intrigued by the concept overview I shared. My heart raced. She didn't mention Walker and Reed? No, but I didn't bring them up either. "As far as Diana knows, this is a Turner Creative pitch and you're part of our team." "Which you are," Melissa chimed in, apparently on the same call. "At least for this pitch." I took a deep breath. "Okay, I need to call in sick to Walker and Reed." "Are you sure about this, Charlotte?" Melissa asked. Last chance to back out. I thought about the email waiting in my inbox, requesting minor edits to the slides I'd be getting no credit for, about Richard's dismissive just business, and 7 years of watching less qualified men advance while I remained in place. "I'm sure," I said. "Let's do this." That evening, I prepared more thoroughly than I ever had for a presentation. I researched Diana Pierce extensively, her background, her approach to marketing, her public statements about brand vision. I practiced my delivery, anticipating questions and preparing answers. As I finally fell into bed, exhausted but excited, my phone buzzed with a text from David. "Where are those edits? Need them for tomorrow's dry run." I stared at the message, a strange calm settling over me. After a moment, I typed, "Finishing them now. You'll have them in the morning." I would send the edits. One last contribution to Walker and Reed. And then I would walk into Johnson and Mercer headquarters and take control of my future. Tuesday morning arrived with knots in my stomach and a surge of adrenaline in my veins. I called Walker and Reed's HR line at 7:30 a.m., leaving a message about a sudden flu keeping me home. By 8, I was at Turner Creative, reviewing the presentation one last time with Melissa and Natalie. "Remember," Melissa advised as we gathered our materials, "Diana appreciates directness. Don't oversell or apologize for your ideas." Natalie nodded in agreement. "And remember, you know this concept better than anyone. Trust your expertise." The Johnson and Mercer headquarters occupied the top floors of a downtown high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. As we were escorted to the conference room, I found myself wondering if David and Richard had been here yet, preparing their pitch for Thursday. The thought both unnerved and strengthened my resolve. Diana Pierce wasn't what I expected. From her LinkedIn profile, I'd imagined someone more corporate, but the woman who greeted us exuded creative energy, from her stylish bob to her bright blue blazer. "Natalie, good to see you," she said warmly before turning to us. "And you must be Melissa and Charlotte. I've heard interesting things about Turner Creative." She wasn't alone. 2 other executives joined us, Marcus Wright, their digital strategy director, and Elizabeth Chen, VP of Brand Management. I recognized their names from the brief I'd studied at Walker and Reed. As Natalie made introductions, I fought to keep my expression neutral. This was happening. I was really pitching my own concept, independent of the agency that had sidelined me. "So," Diana said once we were seated, "Natalie mentioned you have a unique approach to our rebranding challenge. I'm intrigued, especially since we're already deep in the selection process for an agency partner." The subtle warning was clear. "Convince me why I should even be listening to you." Melissa took the lead, introducing Turner Creative's philosophy and some of their recent successful campaigns. Then she turned to me. "And now I'd like Charlotte to walk you through our concept for Johnson and Mercer." I stood, momentarily dizzy with nervousness, but as soon as I began speaking about the strategy, everything else faded away. This was my territory. I knew every aspect of this concept, every potential question, every possible execution. Heritage Forward isn't just a campaign, I explained, moving through the presentation with growing confidence. It's a platform that honors your 75-year legacy while propelling the brand into contemporary relevance. It creates a dialogue between generations, positioning Johnson & Mercer as the bridge between established tradition and emerging needs. I outlined the digital ecosystem, the content strategy, and the metrics for success. I showed how user-generated stories would create authentic connections while maintaining the company's reputation for reliability. When I reached the section on community impact, the element Walker & Reed had deemed unnecessary, I noticed Diana and Elizabeth exchange interested glances. "This Community Ambassadors program," Elizabeth said, leaning forward. "It's ambitious. What makes you confident it would succeed?" This was exactly the kind of challenge I'd prepared for. I cited 3 case studies where similar approaches had worked, explained the implementation strategy, and addressed potential obstacles. The more questions they asked, the more the conversation flowed naturally, until it felt less like a formal pitch and more like a collaborative planning session. After nearly 90 minutes, twice our allotted time, Diana finally glanced at her watch. "This has been enlightening," she said. "Truly, your approach aligns remarkably well with our internal discussions about where the brand needs to go." Marcus, who had been quietly attentive throughout, spoke up. "I'm particularly impressed with the digital architecture. It's comprehensive without being overwhelming." "Thank you," I said, feeling a surge of pride. These were my ideas being recognized, my vision being appreciated, directly, without filtration through David or Richard. "We do have one more agency presentation scheduled," Diana said carefully. "On Thursday." My heart skipped. Walker & Reed. "But I think we have a lot to discuss internally after this meeting," she continued. "Natalie, could you send over the full deck and implementation timeline by end of day?" "Absolutely," Natalie confirmed. As we gathered our materials, Diana approached me directly. "Charlotte, your passion for this concept is evident. It's refreshing to see someone so deeply connected to the strategy they're presenting." If only she knew how deep that connection really was. Back at Turner Creative, the debriefing was positive but cautious. "They were engaged," Melissa noted. "Especially with your sections, Charlotte. But they still have that other meeting scheduled. My meeting, technically. My concept, in someone else's hands." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we wait," Natalie said simply. "I'll send the follow-up materials Diana requested, and then it's in their hands. And if they go with Walker & Reed?" The possibility stung, even though I'd known it was a risk from the beginning. Melissa gave me a level look. "Then we know they weren't the right client for us. But regardless of what happens with Johnson & Mercer, I want you on my team, Charlotte. This pitch confirmed what I've always thought. You're wasted at Walker & Reed." The offer was unexpected and flattering. I'd have to officially resign first. "Of course," Melissa agreed. "But think about it. No pressure until after we hear from Johnson & Mercer." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, half expecting angry messages from David or Richard, wondering if word had somehow gotten back to them. But there was nothing. Just the usual work emails that I now viewed through a completely different lens. One was from Bethany, asking for any background research I had on Johnson & Mercer's target demographics. I stared at it for a long time before deciding not to respond. Let David figure it out. After all, he was the one who'd wanted this tight-knit team. Wednesday crawled by. I worked remotely, citing my flu, handling routine tasks for other clients while constantly checking my email for news from Natalie. Nothing came. Thursday, the day of Walker & Reed's pitch, was excruciating. I imagined David standing where I had stood, presenting my ideas as if they were collective inspiration. I pictured Richard's satisfied smile as they wrapped up, confident in their delivery of concepts they hadn't created. At 3:45 p.m., my phone rang. "Natalie." "Diana just called," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "They've made their decision." "Well," I prompted when Natalie didn't immediately continue. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. "They want us," she said, her professional composure finally breaking into excitement. "Turner Creative will be handling the Johnson & Mercer rebranding. Diana was particularly impressed with the Heritage Forward concept and wants to move ahead immediately. I sank onto my couch, a wave of emotions washing over me. Relief, vindication, disbelief, and yes, a hint of schadenfreude at the thought of Walker and Reed's reaction. Did she mention the other agency presentation? I couldn't help asking. Only that they appreciated everyone's time and efforts, but our approach aligned most closely with their vision for the brand's future. Natalie paused. Charlotte, Diana specifically mentioned that your presentation stood out. She wants you to lead the creative strategy. Me. Not as part of a team managed by someone else. Not as the behind-the-scenes workhorse, but as the recognized lead. I need to resign from Walker and Reed, I said, the reality of my situation suddenly clear. Properly, in person. Of course, Natalie agreed. Melissa said to take whatever time you need. We'll start preliminary planning, but the real work begins when you're officially on board. The next morning, I dressed with particular care. My most professional blazer, the one I reserved for client presentations I was rarely invited to attend. I felt oddly calm as I entered the Walker and Reed building, nodding to the receptionist who did a double take at my presence. Feeling better? She asked. Much, I replied. Is Richard in? I found him in the conference room with David, both looking distinctly frustrated as they reviewed what appeared to be post-mortem notes from the Johnson and Mercer pitch. Charlotte? Richard said, surprise evident in his tone. Didn't expect to see you today. David said you were out sick. I'm better now, I said, closing the door behind me. But we need to talk. David frowned. If this is about the pitch, we can debrief next week. It didn't go as well as expected. I bet it didn't, I thought, but kept my expression neutral. Actually, I'm here to submit my resignation, effective immediately. I've accepted a position at Turner Creative. The stunned silence that followed was almost worth the entire ordeal. Richard recovered first. Turner? Melissa's shop? That's unexpected. What position? Creative Strategy Director, I said, the title still new and thrilling on my tongue. Melissa had offered it last night, along with a substantial salary increase. That's quite a jump, David said, his tone suggesting skepticism rather than congratulations. It is, I agreed, but they recognize my capabilities in a way Walker and Reed never has. Richard's expression hardened slightly. Charlotte, if this is about being left off the Johnson and Mercer pitch team, it's about 7 years of being left off teams, Richard. 7 years of watching my ideas presented by others. 7 years of being told to wait for opportunities that never materialized. I placed my resignation letter on the table. I've already spoken with HR about my unused vacation days and the exit process. My desk will be cleared by noon. David was staring at me with narrowed eyes. Turner Creative, he repeated slowly. Didn't they just pitch Johnson and Mercer? My pulse quickened, but I maintained eye contact. I believe they may have, yes. With your concept? His voice rose slightly. Heritage Forward? Now Richard was staring too, the implications sinking in. Charlotte, tell me you didn't. I presented my own intellectual property to a client who appreciated its value, I said calmly. Nothing in my contract prevents that. The hell it doesn't. David slammed his hand on the table. That concept was developed for a Walker and Reed client. A prospective client, I corrected, and the approach was mine. Check my contract if you don't believe me. I did. Richard's face had gone from shocked to calculating. This could get messy, Charlotte. Legal battles, reputation damage. Is that really how you want to end your time here? It was a thinly veiled threat, but I'd anticipated it. I don't want messiness, Richard. I just wanted recognition. And now I have it. Elsewhere. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. By the way, Johnson and Mercer signed with Turner Creative yesterday. Diana Pierce was particularly impressed with the community impact elements. The ones you said were unnecessary complications, David. The look on their faces as I closed the door behind me was something I knew I'd remember for a long time. Word spread quickly. By the time I reached my desk, Zoe was already waiting, eyes wide. Is it true? She whispered. You're leaving? And you stole the J&M account? I didn't steal anything, I said, beginning to pack my personal items. I presented my work directly to the client, and they preferred it. And yes, I'm joining Turner Creative. Zoe looked both impressed and concerned. That's bold. What did Richard say? About what you'd expect. Veiled threats, appeals to loyalty, suggestions of legal action. Will they sue? I shrugged, projecting more confidence than I felt. They can try. But Melissa has already consulted their legal team. My contract has enough ambiguity that fighting it would cost Walker and Reed more in legal fees and bad publicity than it's worth. As I continued packing, colleagues stopped by, some to congratulate me, others clearly fishing for gossip. Through it all, I maintained a professional demeanor, neither confirming nor denying the rumors now circulating about exactly how I'd landed at Turner Creative. By noon, my desk was empty, my exit interview complete, and my building access deactivated. As I walked out of Walker and Reed for the last time, I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Team lunch at 1 to welcome our new creative strategy director. Diana will be joining us to discuss next steps. As I headed toward my new beginning, I reflected on the risk I'd taken. It had been bold, perhaps reckless, definitely unconventional. But for the first time in my career, I had refused to let someone else take credit for my vision. I had advocated for myself when no one else would. The city streets bustled around me, indifferent to my personal victory. But I carried it within me, a quiet confidence that would shape every decision moving forward. I had proven to myself what I was capable of when I stopped waiting for permission to shine. Turner Creative's offices appeared ahead, modern and inviting. Through the glass doors, I could see Melissa waiting, ready to introduce me to my new team. As a leader, not a supporting player. I straightened my shoulders and walked forward. This was just the beginning of what I could accomplish when I valued my own voice as much as I wanted others to value it. Sometimes you have to remove yourself from the presentation to finally be seen.